Hey guys, I'm Philip Wilder, and I don't know about you, but this world has been pretty crazy recently. I'm sure lots of people have been talking about it. But because I was freaking out a little bit, I went on to Amazon and I ordered myself the answer to life, the universe, and everything. This is going to solve all of our problems, I'm sure of it, and so I'm really excited to get to today's lesson. Let's get to it. So let's see what's inside this box here. Well, it looks like, oh, well that's funny, it's my Bible. What a weird thing that I just ordered that in the mail. But the answer is not specifically the Bible, though the answer is the Bible. What I want to talk about is specifically in 1 Corinthians chapter 2, verses 1 through 5. And it says, "And I, when I came to you, brothers," this is Paul talking, "did not come proclaiming to you the testimony of God with lofty speech or wisdom. For I decided to know nothing among you except Jesus Christ and him crucified. And I was with you in weakness and in fear and much trembling. And my speech and my message were not in plausible words of wisdom, but in demonstration of the Spirit and of power, so that your faith might not rest in the wisdom of men, but in the power of God." So the answer to life, the universe, and everything is, as Paul sums it up here, it is Jesus Christ and him crucified. How does this solve all of our world's problems? Well, let's go through this a little bit, but first I want to talk about why Jesus is the answer to all of our problems. Jesus is the answer to all of our problems because, one, he's the only one who can forgive us of our sins. Second, he's the only one who can bring us to God. Third, he is the only one who can save us from the coming judgment. And fourth, he's the one who speaks through us. And fifth, he's the one who strengthens us to resist sin and start living a righteous and holy life. That's a lot of very important things that Jesus does for us and wants to do for us if we are following God. How does that then solve all of life's problems? Well, let's start with the coronavirus. The coronavirus is scary, right? Lots of people are dying. We have no idea who has it. It might spring on us and get us suddenly, and we have no idea, so we need to socially distance, and that's all crazy. But in the end, the whole fear of it is death. But Jesus, he has conquered death. Yes, sure, we might die physically, but we'll be resurrected one day if we are following Jesus. So if everyone were following Jesus, and if everyone had the gospel message that we can be saved from our sins and from death through trusting in Jesus and what he did for us and asking us to save us from our sins, that's a great thing, that we don't need to worry about death if we are following Jesus and if we ask Jesus to come into our life. So suddenly, boom, the fear of the coronavirus is completely gone. Of course, we should be striving towards helping people stay alive, and we should fight for that, but the ultimate fear behind it would be gone with Jesus. So there's the answer to that. What about racism and injustice? Jesus talks about that as well too, and Jesus is the ultimate answer to all of it, because there's a few things behind it. One is systematic racism. The second is simply just pride. Why is it that we have such a hard time agreeing with one another? Well, sometimes it's misinformation, but a lot of times it's pride. We want to be right and we don't want to be wrong, and we see ourselves as being better than other people, and we want things that we don't necessarily want for other people. Jesus came to serve, not to be served. So Jesus is the answer again for that. The King of the universe, who above all else should be praised and glorified and served, he came to serve us, people who were sinful, and even to die for us. So how could we not let that live out in our lives? And so the answer here is to simply live as Jesus lived. Jesus is the answer to all of that. Jesus can work within us and help us not be so prideful. He can also work within us to help us share the right words and to share love rather than to share hate. And so Jesus also teaches us a lot about how to understand one another and to respect one another. So Jesus, again, is the answer to that as well too. Well, there's a lot of other things that Jesus is the answer to, especially if we start looking at Facebook conversations. You'll see all these Facebook arguments, and it just seems like everyone just gets angry and starts hating each other. Well, if we simply just look at how Jesus shared truth and love, we see that Jesus ultimately cared about the people he was reaching out to. He wasn't about trying to prove a point. He was trying to help other people. So in the same way, we should follow exactly what Jesus did and be sharing the gospel in all of these Facebook arguments rather than just entertaining these crazy ideas. Maybe they're not even crazy ideas, but rather than getting distracted with all these little side topics, let's focus, as Paul did, on Jesus Christ and Him crucified. Now, what isn't the answer? I think that's an important thing to look at. The answer is not you. You are not the answer. Your words are not the answer either. If we look at this, we see that he said in verse 4, "And my speech and my message were not in plausible words of wisdom, but in demonstration of the Spirit and of power, so that your faith might not rest in the wisdom of men, but in the power of God." So we should not only focus on arguments or on well-crafted points. We should make sure that behind all of this, and yes, of course, it's good to share those points and to share that wisdom, but ultimately it's the power of God that's going to change hearts. And we should make sure that we're sharing our testimony and sharing what God has done and what God is continuing to do, to use that to point people to God. It is not your wisdom and your understanding. If anything, it would be God's wisdom and God's understanding speaking through you. So we need to make sure that we are submitting to God and asking Him to speak through us in all of this. Additionally, the answer is not arguing. We need to make sure that we are sharing all of this in love and in humility. If we look at this, in verse 3 it says, "And I was with you in weakness and in fear and in much trembling." Paul was very humble coming to these people. He wasn't trying to dominate or domineer. He was coming to serve, to point them to the truth. And so in the same way, we should be doing that with the people that we discuss with on Facebook, and the people that hopefully we aren't arguing with. But in all of our conversations, we should be pointing it back to love and to the gospel, rather than getting so distracted on all these little side topics and little details that, sure, maybe they're important, but in the end, if people had Jesus Christ and if they understood that Jesus was crucified for them, that they could be saved from their sins, all of that would be resolved. We wouldn't have to worry quite so much about those other details. Those details should come second. They're good, but they should come second to the gospel every single time. That is the answer to life, the universe, and everything. And I hope that encourages you and hope it gives you some direction as far as how to continue on and how to have these conversations with people. Well, thank you so much for watching. I'm Philip Wilder, and have a great day.